Hello, and welcome to Kaylee's Nightmares, a podcast that delves into the bizarre, chilling, and terrifying stories of myself and our listeners. I am your host, Kaylee, and tonight's story is written and voice acted by me. So turn off the lights, lock your doors, and hide under your covers. This is Strange Things Are Happening at My Apartment, Part 2. I picked up a video doorbell and installed it after the last incident. I also purchased an additional lock that I added to the inside of my apartment. However, recently there was another incident, this time outside. As I mentioned in my last entry, my bed is in the main living area of the apartment. This area also leads out to the balcony via a sliding glass door. I woke up last night to a wailing of sirens as red lights flooded my room. Still in a daze, I grabbed my cat baby and peered outside my blinds. Fire trucks surrounded the park that sits opposite of my apartment. I grabbed my robe and decided to take a better look from my balcony. The fire trucks surrounded the park, and in the distance I could see an inky haze of smoke rising into the sky. I could smell the burnt wood and hear the crackle of fire. The apartment that I passed every day to get into my own apartment was on fire, just diagonal to me on the left side of the park. There were at least 7 stories, and it had its own large underground parking lot. There had to have been a minimum of a few hundred people living there. It was affordable being in this neighborhood. So, unfortunately, there was a large amount of low-income housing and apartments here as well. The apartments were very close together, all separated by this large park in the middle. I was concerned that the fire would spread. I held baby closer to me and barely noticed Miso sitting next to my feet, leaning against my calf. There were about 6 fire trucks all working to put out the fire. Slowly, a crowd started amassing outside of the blackening structure. I heard the familiar hiss of a sliding glass door and saw my neighbor Des stepping out onto her balcony. Des was in the apartment directly to the left of mine, and as a consequence shared my kitchen and the spare room wall. The consequence of having a large sliding glass door and west-facing windows gave me clear view of anyone stepping out to the balcony on either side of me. Our gazes met. Her frail frame shivered, and she was donning a similar fuzzy robe to myself. No words were shared. Thankfully, she seemed to respect my apprehension to social contact. I have only seen her from afar or in passing since she initially introduced herself to me in the first week of living here. And my neighbors on the other side were a nice couple who were also rather introverted. A new siren was then added to the chaos growing on the other side of the park, this time a police vehicle.
Suspect, come out with your hands up. We have you surrounded. Citizens remain inside. Suspect, give up. We have you surrounded. Citizens remain inside.
I slowly stepped back into my apartment. The policeman repeated the phrase again.
Suspect, give up. We have you surrounded. Citizens remain inside.
I heard the hissing of other neighbors opening their sliding door to go back inside. My head ran with news stories of accidental shootings. The phrase was so odd. Suspect? Why not have the name? I couldn't see the man who was speaking. He must have remained in his car. But the sounds of a shot broke my concentration. The sudden loudness was disorienting against the fiery background. I went to my bed, and under the comfort of my weighted blanket, the cats, suddenly invisible, were undeniably hiding from the chaos.
Suspect, come out with your hands up. We have you surrounded. Citizens remain inside.
Every 5 minutes, I obsessively looked through my search bar trying to see if there was any reports on what was happening in my neighborhood, but nothing. That being said, I hadn't seen any news vehicles when I was on my balcony.
Suspect, give up. We have you surrounded. Citizens remain inside.
Every 5 minutes for the next 2 hours. every once in a while accompanied by a gunshot. My search coming up fruitless, I turned to my town's Reddit and Facebook just to see if anything was added. This turned up some more details from the city Reddit. A base user asked a general question. Anyone seeing all the craziness happening in historic downtown? I went to the comments section, hastily typing out a response. More responses were pouring in as well, all verifying shots and sirens. As I went to post my comment, the entire post was shown as deleted. I sighed in frustration and put in my noise-canceling headphones till I reached an uneasy sleep. The last I had seen the time, it was 5 a.m., roughly 4 hours since the commotion initially happened. The next morning, I watched the news for the first time in years. According to the local news station, there was an electrical issue that burned down the apartment kitty-corner to mine. The news didn't mention shots or any police being present, and they didn't have any footage. Instead, they used a stock photo with a fire present. Watching the news was interrupted by a woman crying. I was only able to make out small pieces of information. Her son was taken to the hospital from a gunshot wound from the night prior. She was on the phone with her mother relaying what happened, but it was no use. That same night, her apartment was cleared out. I never found out if she or her son were okay. Men in matching uniforms cleared it out, and I haven't seen her since. That unit is now listed on Zillow, if anyone is looking. The city is lying to us, but the question I have is for how long? Thank you for listening, and if you want to add to the podcast, which is a collaborative story platform, please enter your own story at Kaylee's Nightmares on Facebook /Kaylee's Nightmares on Reddit, or send it by email to kayleesnightmares@gmail.com to have your story read on the pod. If you have any ideas that you want to see made into a story, please feel free to send as well. To support my work, donate to Kaylee's Nightmares on Patreon. Music on this episode was Sovereign by Kevin MacLeod.